Hi, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful empowered harmonizers. I hope you can see me. It's getting towards the evening here on a beautiful summer day. We're taking in the sunshine. The temperature is absolutely perfect. Just a very light breeze, and I wanted to finally come out. The weather was permitting, where we could go out and really sort of do one of these important videos. And before we get started on today's topic, which is based on a great viewer question, and that is, why do I have such a difficult time sort of processing this and getting over a covert narcissist and sort of the wounds that I have internalized, that the way that this relationship has imprinted on me. In other words, it's still so much a part of me that I can't really sort of separate and let go. So I really think that this is going to be some very important information to help raise your awareness, raise your sensitivity, raise your understanding, to help you make that transition, that transformation, and really moving beyond and growing and not feeling bad, guilty, weighted down. I think it'll be a great weight off of your shoulders. But before we get started, so that's a great question. And before we get started, I just want to give a huge shout out to those of you who have recently donated to the channel and have been commenting on the channel. Thank you so much for your donations, your positive feedback, your positive comments, and the discussion that we have here on the community. It really is heartwarming to me. It really does make me feel good to know that the resources and tools that we're putting together here on the channel are making an impact. It's hitting home. You're understanding things. You're not so bogged down. You're not in sort of the fog, the fear, obligation, and guilt that keeps you sort of clouded and thinking cloudy and thinking, flawed thinking, that I call it negative orderly direction thinking. And how do you sort of come out of that? So thank you so much for your comments. It really does help uplift me and make me feel very good. So thank you so much. And absolutely positively, if you want to participate in the channel, you can comment. You can also contribute at the PayPal Donate Now button here on the homepage if we've been a positive influence for you here in your life. So here we get started. I want to really sort of dive into the covert narcissist relationship and help you to understand sort of the automatic pilot, the compulsive sort of thought, or the brainwashing or gaslighting that tends to, I hope you can see me here. It feels like the lighting is kind of very strong here on the side of the face. I hope you can see me. Whoa, sorry guys. We just fell over a minute here. Let's try this. This is a little bit brighter. Okay, forgive me here. Let's try this. Okay, can you see me? I feel like I'm talking in the shadows. Okay, so much better. Beautiful setting outside here today. And so we've got the privacy here of this video, and we're really, we're doing this raw. I don't edit this stuff. I want it just to be natural, organic, etc. We're not here to analyze and paralyze. We're here just to dive into the content. So that's a great viewer question, which is to understand sort of the compulsivity, the sort of the automatic pilot, the way the brainwashing really gets imprinted. It's like you've internalized an inner critic. You have this sort of responsiveness, which is always reactive, not only to the person who's sort of inflicted these wounds little by little over time, very gradual, almost very unnoticeable, to the point where eventually it builds up. I've given this analogy to that of like a pearl. The way, you've got the mollusk, the shells, and then one tiny grain of sand goes in. It's an irritant to that mollusk, and it begins to, release the lacquer to try to soften up the edges. Well, it's a reaction mechanism. It's a reaction mechanism to this grain of sand. So I really feel that the covert narcissist relationship is very slow and progressive over time, where it's little by little by little by little, you're in a constant reactive state, to the point where you become the pearl, you become that reaction. You've internalized this inner critic, this internal critical advisor, which keeps you in what I call negative orderly direction thinking, or always in a reactive, sort of like all of your actions, all of your intentions are designed to elicit a response to help smooth over the pain of the relationship. So in other words, we see the coping mechanisms, the trying too hard, the feeling like you're inadequate, and then trying to overcompensate through the defense mechanisms of drinking, of working too hard, workaholism, over obligating yourself to other people to gain significance, to try to feel better about yourself. In other words, there's all these behaviors which are trying to fix what's inside, which has been in the internal advisor, the internal critical advisor, which is imprinted on you, because if you're around a pathological individual who is a covert narcissist, so they don't seem overtly abusive. They don't seem in the beginning, little by little, what we're talking about, little by little, gradually over time, it makes a big deal. Once again, it makes a big impact in your life and where you find yourself on down the road. Your life, your happiness is here, and then you find you're way over here, and you're like, how do I get back? So it's really like the journey back is understanding that the covert narcissist, or anyone who is really sort of pathological, they could be alcoholic, they could be drug addicts, they could be physically abusive. This can be a parent, who is always creating this chaos, this anger, this hostility, and you're always in a hyper aroused, fight or flight, agitated state, which is anxiety, which is then internalized, so your body is like always anxious. You're always, and then it develops this feeling of inadequacy, this social anxiety, the feeling that you're not good enough, feeling that you're always going to be rejected. That is because there's nothing wrong with you. It's not that you are anxious. It's not that you are not good enough. It's that was the motion that was set into motion by this relationship. The fight or flight, the being reactive, the fearful state, the fear of being threatened. This person is always angry, or the feeling that you're being manipulated. In other words, it can be a quiet rage, which is what we see in the covert narcissist. So it's not an outward anger like, do this for me, you da 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 da, and you should do this, da 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 da. It's not outwardly communicated, and that is part of the problem. It's a very sort of quiet, subtle, agreed to manipulation. The manipulation is done by eye contact, feeling that you are a disappointment, feeling that you can't get any communication out of this person, feeling like they're always retreating and receding into the background, and they're very uncommunicative. They don't want to interact. And so you begin then to overcompensate to try to pull them out or balance out the relationship, because if not, then everybody would be isolated, nothing would get done, there would be no relationship, it would dissolve, so you try to carry it on your shoulders, and this becomes a compulsion. Meaning it's just a compulsive feeling like I am not good enough. So you feel compulsive self-loathing, but it's on the subconscious, which means, you're feeling this. You're not always verbalizing this to yourself, but it is a feeling state. So realize that the feeling state is your subconscious mind. Your body is your subconscious mind. It holds this all within its reservoirs. The subconscious mind, the limbic brain, the emotions, are the most powerful driving force really in all of your choices, decisions, your behaviors, who you become. Really your character and your identity is fueled by that subconscious. So if the subconscious has in there, in the mix, in the recipe, in the hard wiring, in the hardware, in the hard drive of you, then that essentially means that all your behaviors are based on that feeling, and then it's the reaction which you're trying to repeat over and over and over again. So people wonder, why is it so difficult? Why do I have this social anxiety? Why do I have this addiction? Why am I always agitated? It's because you're always trying to stay in that reactive state, even though that person might not be there, even though they're older, even if they've passed on, even if you've told yourself enough is enough, you're still in that reactive state. And then your behaviors, here's the key thing, is that oftentimes you're trying to get approval from this person where you'll never be able to get the approval from. So we talk about that external validation. You're constantly striving to get that feedback from that person. In other words, they set you up by the manipulation. They set you up by constantly sort of controlling you through this, very underhanded mechanism. And so they have this control over you. So you're always kind of in this reactive state to get their acknowledgement, to get their validation, to get their approval, to get the you are good enough, you are enough, and then, and then set you free. So you're still kind of living in that loop of trying to satisfy their requirements. So you find that you're subconsciously driven, you're self-sabotaging yourself. Why did I make that mistake again? OMG, why did I just eat all that? Why did I drink all that? Why did I feel all that? Why did I just ruin my day? Why did I yell at my children? Why am I? So you're like internalizing that internal advisor, so you become inner critical, and then you sort of pass this on to your other relationships or your other people who are in your immediate environment, unless you work through it. And to work through it is to understand how this has been internalized, how it's become part of you. But it doesn't need to stay like that forever. You don't need to always be answering to this person, which is really what sets up that compulsive and keeps it sort of that trauma bond enmeshed, where you kind of feel like you can't be separate from, distinguished from, autonomous from. Yet, they're distinguished, autonomous really from you. Why don't you have the same? Why aren't we on equal footing? Is really what ends up when you really dig down, is to understand that you have then complied, you've cooperated, you've agreed to this lesser than, I am not enough, I must, fall docile and submissive to this manipulation. In other words, I must become according to your standards, yet it'll never be appeased. Do you see the tension that it creates? In other words, you're always trying to pacify and acquiesce to someone who won't give you the approval. It's the manipulation that keeps them there, and it keeps you stuck. So the compulsiveness, meaning the compulsive feeling that you're not good enough, you don't have enough. And so that is an anxiety state. And then when you get into that anxiety state, you can flesh it out when you get aware that you have been sending this through repetition. You've been reinforcing and rememorizing this through your body, which is your subconscious mind, which is really dig down deep. It's like in your limbic brain. You can almost feel it like in the base of your neck or your head or your shoulders, because it's how you carry yourself. It's how you see things. It's how you're able to breathe. It's how you're able to come into the present and to feel like I am enough. And it's to stop that reaction and that answering to the needs and requirements of this person, and instead shutting those out and being sensitive to yourself, being sensitive to what you love, what you adore, and then who can acknowledge and validate you, and then you can begin to have open eyes and be able to have relationships with people that aren't tainted with this anxiety, that aren't tainted with judgment, that aren't tainted with feelings of like, I'm not good enough. So that anxiety leaves your life completely. That anxiety leaves your relationship with yourself. That anxiety leaves your previous relationships, because you realize you release that internal advisor when you see how it was set up and see how it's no longer part of you. It's no longer important for you to respond to that and acquiesce to that. When you say, I'm going to stop that, no more dominoes. I'm not giving any more chips here. I am enough. I have what I have is what I have. In other words, you look upon yourself and your life as the positive. I have what belongs to me. I have what belongs to me. When you say this, you get an internal sense of your own internal command, your own power. And oftentimes that is what's shaky in the beginning, because you are not receiving the support. You're not receiving the nurturing. You're not receiving the confirmation. You're not receiving the warmth, the oxytocin, the bond from this. It's a trauma bond. It's not a healthy bond. So it's actually a whole different neurochemical reaction. And so to break free from that hard wiring is to let it go. It's to identify it, become aware, and through conscious awareness and metacognition, release it from your hard drive, release it from your sense of being, releasing the tension that is driving you to try to appease and pacify either this group of people, this negative people, because oftentimes it can create a whole host of relationships and things, places that you go, things that you do, how you feel, the music you listen to, the movies you watch, the news you watch, the interests you pursue are oftentimes tainted with that same problematic issue. So it really kind of works its way like a root system into many areas of your life. And so if you have this compulsive feeling, the compulsive feeling is that you're still trying to win the love and approval from this person who can't give it to you in that manner. It's to have acceptance, it's to have the awareness, the understanding, and accept. Oftentimes you need to work through the stages of guilt. Okay, this cannot happen. I am not, no matter how hard I try, struggle, strive, self-sabotage myself, and try to work through it, it's going to result in that. It's going to nullify itself. It's going to really sort of devour my time. It's going to devour my positivity, my creativity. And eventually you reach that and you say, okay, I understand now, and I love this person for who they are, and that they are who they are, and so it is, and I am releasing them and in compassion, love, and to go to the light. Basically release them to the light. If you can do that, you will set yourself free, because when you release them to the light, you're giving yourself permission to have the light yourself. And the light means that feeling of sort of a dawning of positivity, a sort of feeling of inherent freedom. You're not in a reactive state, you're more in a driven, responsive state. You're responsible and accountable for yourself. You're no longer sort of incorporating this person who always wants to be on the forefront of your mind, which eventually affects your judgment, your decision, your reasoning. They absorb that whole prefrontal cortex, which designs your life moving forward. So the goal here now to release the compulsiveness is to see how that past, that limbic reactive state, how that has caused this whole chaos into motion, and how it's created this reactivity and all the other defense mechanisms which have been put into place. The overspending, the overdrinking, the overworking, the underemployment, all the situations you find yourself in, not being able to take care of yourself or not really sort of on your best path. That oftentimes is because it's taking up too much space. In other words, think of it like your internal real estate that you're now no longer keeping that part as part of your parcel of land. So it's letting them go in love and light, meaning you wish only the best for them. You only wish all that can be, and that you're releasing them to an infinite intelligence which has created this earth, which is not man-made, and it is to understand that it's engineered with an intelligence, and that you wish this intelligence to go and to take care of them, and to no longer be reactive, responsive to this. And it's to say, I let it go, and I'm no longer living in that fear reactive state. It's no longer the place that I'm called for to be. That's not where I want to be, in terms of where you want to be, feel, and become. And so once you do that and you become in a more calm, relaxed body, knowing that understanding and knowing that it's not your responsibility, and it's not because you failed them, it's oftentimes because their trauma bond was set up because they were not able to be there for you. It's to, admit the holiest of holies. And so it is to see that that's, really, they're sort of really kind of small in that regard, but it's very threatening to see it as such, especially if it's a parent, especially if it's a spouse or a family member. It can be very threatening, but in the privacy of this video, you can kind of get it down to size, get it down to perspective. This is this person. Yes, they had a monumental impact in my life, but it's no longer setting the domino effect for me going in the positive, negative direction. And so I'm mature enough, I have the awareness and cognition now through understanding and working through it, which is what we're doing right now. We're working through it. We're working through it like comb through a brush through the grass, getting the leaves out, getting the weeds out, getting all the junk out so that the new land is there. You're getting out all the muck and the things that were an obstacle and inhibiting you and holding you back, which is that internalized, internal critical advisor, that negative orderly direction thinking, that feeling that you weren't good enough, that you were crazy. How could you do this when you've been scapegoated and it's been told to you thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of times, and you've repeated this for, there's 365 days in a year. How many times have you reinforced that per day? How many years has that compounded on? You can see how it's pretty ingrained. Okay, but you can release it in a moment. I release it now. I'm not stuck in that groove, the way that I feel, the way that I behave. I can relax. I can make a good choice. You can really only make the good choice once you've kind of gotten into that fertile ground within you and say, amen, I've got a fertile ground. I've got a space within me. And that's really what the goal of this channel is, to create that space. Is to create the space for you to come up and step forward and say, enough is enough. I am here. I have arrived. I'm ready to have me. I want me, I have me, and I've got my back. I've got my back better than anybody else, and the universe will conspire to assist me once I open up to it. So it's like an opening up. We're talking about a lot of feeling states, but it's meant to be done in a safe place where you can release those secrets, release those hidden things which have been underneath the surface, because the subconscious mind is one of the most powerful drivers. So that's why it's so important for you to be able to live in that subconscious mind and get the information and the knowledge and the wisdom, which is really superior guidance to your everyday conscious mind. We are in this information society where we're taught to, be distracted, get another Starbucks, get another this, get another that, pay attention to this device, this upgrade, this change, this password. You're always in this reactive state. It's not healthy. You need to be able to take a step back. You need to be able to say, I am here and I am enough. And to stop and becoming more responsive and being able to say no to the downfall. Say now no to the feeling of their assessment and then the meaning that you assess to it. So a lot of people have felt like failures because of the relationship. That simply is not true. You were living in a highly reactive relationship where you were not really given what you needed, so you had to overcompensate and you had to kind of be at your own, you were at your own demise. And oftentimes this is then acted in the way that you felt as a reaction because you weren't getting in a healthy relationship. The foundation was rocky, it was cragged, it was uneven. So you're just like always trying to, act and be overly, doing all the wrong behaviors just to get to zero. And so it's to come to center and front and center now and being in a state of now, and to realize that there's a permanency and there's a safety to your healing. So the problem with, oftentimes I also feel, is with the covert narcissist relationship, is that they have created a sense of permanency within you. They give a sense of predictability. If you can always drink, that's predictable. If you can always fight, there's a sense of permanency and security and certainty that oftentimes people get in this loop. So in other words, the momentum. So that's why it's important to break that cycle. It's important to break that loop. It's important to break that feeling state so you're not defined by this person who is really not the great definer of you. It seems that way, your perspective was such, but that was inaccurate. They always want to keep you a leg down. They don't want to be supportive. They are withholding in nature. They're keeping you in the dark, guessing, etc. We've discussed so many of the manipulation tactics of a covert narcissist who is pathological self-importance, and they have a lack of empathy. So they're not really worried about you. They're not really sort of caring and considerate. There can be, as Vera said, the outward showing of such, but yet they tend to always act with resentment. Resentment for giving you, or, participating in the relationship when you should not be meant to carry that heavy negativity. Any negativity feels so very heavy. So you should not feel that sort of fear and like, you know, your happiness is your anchor. And that has a sense of permanency. And it's not like, whoa, I just bought a boat. Whoa, I just, you know, it's a sense of permanency and a sort of feeling that goes with you and rides through you throughout the day. So it's checking in on that awareness. I love where I'm at. I love this. Identifying that which you adore. Identifying that which is really sort of catches your eye. And so it's to also answer the questions which can help to really release your inner truth and what you truly need, and then being able to go there almost non-verbally. It's to go there just without question, without self-criticism, without self-judgment, and going and satisfying your needs. It's the sort of emotion that where you become very calm and you really become into your own inner guidance and you ask yourself for that guidance. And it's saying, now that I'm no longer reactive, now that I'm no longer so afraid, where do I really belong? Where do I become who I truly am meant to be? And being able to hear and then write down 1 through 20 those answers. And it can be a feeling state, it can be a be state, and you might find some action that then drives you there. You might have, your internal dialogue might say it's time for you to join a spiritual support group. It's time for you to find a church in your area. Even if you go alone, even if you feel like you're going to well up into tears, at least you can go. You can put yourself out there. A lot of people have a very difficult time putting themselves out there. You might find that you need to stop procrastinating and stop avoiding. So now that I'm safe, I can stop self-sabotaging myself by now stopping and then list 1 through 10. I mean, people have all sorts of things that they procrastinate with. They have all sorts of things that they avoid in their life because of a fear that they're not good enough, that they can't handle it. Yes, you can. It's oftentimes that sort of negative ball that's been put into motion, which is telling you can't when you actually really can. And so it's to see you are enough. You are good enough to do that which you want to become. So if you want to become gainfully employed, you can do this. If you want to have a healthy relationship, you can do this. If you want to be happy just on your own or with a pet and, work on your health and work on your happiness and grow your mind and fill your knowledge through reading or podcasts or videos, what have you, then so be it. Then allow that to be. Allow yourself to be defined by the positive and continue to accumulate that through repetition and experience that internally good feeling. I am enough. I have what it takes. I am what it takes. And I am not divorced from such. I'm not divorced from my own inner power and my own peace. So that once you get to that state, you'll see that you don't need to continue that compulsive negative feeling. You release that state and you allow yourself just to be. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today, and I hope that these videos do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. Be happy, be you, be free, be liberated, be free of guilt, be free of obligation, be free of fear. Release it and then allow your body to adjust. Your mind will then become at one. You'll begin to find the solutions. You'll begin to make the changes effortlessly, because the good life oftentimes is arrived at when you release that struggle and your life becomes more fluid, creative, and innovative.